Hello everyone, welcome back to the Japan Archives. Today you wanted me to pick something from the Meiji period,
That is correct.
and I did.
Oh.
The person I found was called Tsuda Umeko, or Tsuda just Ume, using the kanji for plum. She was born December 31st, 1864, and lived until August 16th, 1929. And she was a female Japanese educator and the founder of Tsuda University. Now, this university can be found in Tokyo, in Kodaira, and it is a private women's university, and it is one of the oldest, as she was the first to found it, and it is one of the most prestigious higher educational institutions for women in Japan, and has obviously since its inception contributed to the advancement of women in Japanese society now for over a century. I'm going to ask as usual, is this something you know about?
I almost answered you before you even asked. I've not. This is fascinating. Please tell me more.
There's going to come a day where it's like, yes, I already know this. I'm like, oh, I need a different topic now. That you already know everything.
No, it'd
But
be
that is
fun. It'd
not
be fun.
today.
No, not today.
This woman was born the daughter of Tsuda Sen, who was an agricultural scientist. She was one of the very early women to go to the US at the age of 7. She actually became Japan's first female exchange student, traveling to the US. And this was at the time she went on the same ship as a group of other Japanese people who were going to America on the Iwakura mission. I'm going to briefly mention what that is later. And I think we need to come back to that as well because it's a big thing from the Meiji period, apparently. Now, like I said, she was named Tsuda Ume, the Ume referencing the Japanese plum. But she also went by the name of Ume Suda while studying in the United States. And later on in her life in 1902, that's when she changed her name to Umeko. The ko being the kanji for child. She was plum child. She was born in Edo in the Ushigome neighborhood, which is now in the Shinjuku area of Tokyo. And she was the second daughter of Tsuda-sen, and her mom was known as Hatsuko. Her dad was a progressive agriculturalist and was one of those who greatly encouraged the westernization of Japan, but also, interesting enough, promoted the Christianization of Japan during the Meiji period. In 1871, her father was involved in what my research says was the Hokkaido colonization project. And now I want to know
Oh,
what that
okay.
is. Do you know this?
I sort of vaguely have a recollection of this, and if you push me right now, I'd probably make many mistakes, but I have a passing familiarity with that topic. We should definitely look into that one too.
Okay. So, yeah, her dad was involved with this, and he also did raise the topic of Western education, not just for men, but also women in Japan. Now, under the sponsorship of Kuroda Kiyotaka, who was also involved in the Hokkaido colonization project, Tsuda Ume was volunteered by her father as one of 5 women members to take part in the Iwakura mission that went to America. The other female students who were chosen to go study abroad from Japan were called Nagai Shige, Ueda Tei, Yoshimasu Ryo, obviously Tsuda Ume, and another girl called Yamakawa Tsutematsu. Heather, tell us about the Iwakura mission. I know you're an expert.
Huh? Sorry.
So, The confusion on your face right now is beautiful to behold. Now, the Iwakura mission, or the Iwakura embassy, or in Japanese, the Iwakura Shisetsudan, was a diplomatic. Ah, what a beautiful
Oh.
new word. So it was a Japanese diplomatic voyage to the United States and Europe, which was conducted between 1871 and 1873 by leading statesmen and scholars from the Meiji period at the time. Now, it was not only a significant mission for the westernization of Japan at the time, but it was also the most well known and possibly most significant in terms of its impact for the modernization of Japan and its opening up from isolation from the West after it had been a closed country for so long. And just to quickly say, because we will come back to this at a later date, the aim of the mission was to gain recognition for the newly reinstated imperial dynasty of the Meiji Emperor, to begin preliminary renegotiation of the unequal treaties with the dominant world powers, and it was to make a comprehensive study of modern industrial, political, military, and educational systems from the United States and Europe to be possibly adapted by Japan. And the Iwakura mission followed on from several other missions which had been sent by the previous shogunate. And yes, I do want to talk about that at some point. It looks really interesting, but when you asked me to look into the Meiji period, most of the things I were getting was the opening up of Japan, the reinstatement of the emperor, the end of the shogunate, the westernization. I don't want to do those yet. They're like really big topics.
Yeah.
So I wanted to pick something really kind of random. So when I looked into this and it talked about the opening up of Japan, I then found the Iwakura mission, which then linked me to the 5 girls, which I then clicked on to read about them. And she just, Tsuda Ume kind of jumped out at me, which is why I randomly picked her. So to continue her life, so she was 6 years old for the expedition. So she was the youngest member to go.
Oh, wow.
And she arrived, I don't know how long it took on boat back then, but they arrived in San Francisco on November 1871, and she remained in the US as a student until she was 18 years old. So she was there for 12 years. Her entire childhood and adolescence was basically spent not in Japan. Now, Tsuda lived in Washington from December 1871 with a man known as Charles Lanman, and he was the secretary of Japanese legation. He and his wife Adeline, they had no children of their own, so they did treat her as her own child, and under the name of Ume Tsuda, like we said, she changed her name in America, she switched it around. She attended the middle class Georgetown Collegiate School, which is where she learned English. So she arrived in America not even knowing the language, which I guess at that point in time does make sense. After she graduated, she received awards in many, many things. In deportment, in arithmetic, in writing, and in composition. So she was very well educated and a very smart woman. And after graduating, she entered into, I don't know if you know this, into the Archer Institute, which catered to the daughters of politicians and bureaucrats. It's also said that she was very intelligent and excelled in language, maths, science, and music, and was especially gifted in the piano. And in addition to English, she also studied and learned quite a lot of Latin and French. And only 1 year after arriving in the US, she actually asked to be baptized as a Christian. And although the people who were looking after her were Episcopalians, they decided that she should attend a non-sectarian Old Swedes church. And yes, she was baptized.
It's not mentioning like so she was not around her family. Was she does it mention anything about her Japanese language skills? Because that age is really young to she's speaking English and not getting any sort of Japanese language. I How much would she be able to retain? Not very much.
Well, Heather. So after her exchange program finishes, so by now it's 1882, she returns to Japan. And she had basically forgotten Japanese
Yeah, that age, yeah.
and was plagued with many, many temporary difficulties because she had to relearn her own language. She no longer remembered it. And she'd come from a country where women were a lot more free to coming back to Japan, where women were still very inferior in Japanese society. So she was not only trying to relearn her language, but she was also now facing many, many cultural problems which she had not grown up with because she didn't. Obviously, she knew Japanese culture up until the age of 6, but then she was away for so long, she forgot all of those things as well. And obviously, when you're a little girl, you don't really realize
Yeah.
superiority and inferiority in your own country. So she grew up experiencing more freedom and then returned to a country that gave her less freedom. So she struggled with it for a while. She even experienced with her father after she returned that though he was, very westernized and he wanted to open up to the West, he was still very traditional in his patriarchal side and his authoritarian side with regards to
Ah.
women. So Tsuda then eventually found a job and was hired by someone called Ito Hirobumi, and she was a tutor for a while, a tutor for his children. Then by 1885, she began to work in a girls' school for the daughters of the Kazoku peerage, which was known as the Peeresses' School. Now, the Kazoku was the hereditary peerage of the Empire of Japan at the time, and they existed all the way until 1947. And this was the succession from the daimyo and the shogunate system. So you had what would have been equivalent in English, I suppose, as these people held titles of like baron, viscount,
Ah.
marquis, duke, that kind of thing. So she worked at a school for the daughters of these kinds of people. But still, she was not satisfied with the restrictions of the educational opportunities, even to these girls of, I guess, a higher standing and the nobility. And she was not satisfied because Japan at this time, still, these schools had the policy that education was intended to, get the girls ready to act as ladies and train them to be obedient wives and good future
Mm.
mothers.
Ah.
And she was then later assisted from 1888 by a friend that she had got in America by the name of Alice Bacon. She decided to return to the United States again for a while, presumably because of the restrictions in Japan that she was struggling with. And as an aside, Alice Bacon was also a women's educator. And she was a foreign advisor to the Japanese government during the Meiji period. And she actually published 3 books and many essays based on her experience as from her time in Japan, and eventually
Ah.
became known as a specialist on Japanese culture and women, which is quite interesting. So she returns to the United States for a second time and she attended another college. She continues her education. She goes to the Breen Mawr College in Philadelphia from 1889 to 1892, where she studied biology and education. Presumably something, well, at least biology, something that would not have been accessible to Japanese women in Japan at the time. And she also studied at St. Hilda's College, Oxford. So she studied in England for a while as well. During her second time in the United States, she basically decided that all Japanese women should be able to have the opportunity to study abroad. It should be a right for everyone, not just, people who
Hmm.
are high up in society. And she made numerous public speeches about the education of women in Japan and raised $8,000 in funds to establish a
Oh,
scholarship for Japanese women.
oh, that's
And
amazing.
now I want to know how much that is in modern day.
Say a lot.
Well, let's see. $10,000 today would be around $330,000. So she raised quite a bit of cash to help women, and she was really good of her. And so, after all of this work, she gets even more well educated. She's fighting for the educational rights of women in Japan. She returns to Japan once more. She returns to the PRS's school and teaches there for a while, well as teaching at the Tokyo Women's Normal School.
That's a name. Mm-hmm.
As for the name of why it was a normal school,
Mm-hmm.
I do not know. I have no idea why. It was called the Tokyo Women's Normal School. Then it became the
Hmm.
Tokyo Women's Campus of Tokyo Normal School. Then it became the Women's Campus of Higher Normal School. Then the Women's Higher Normal School. And then the Tokyo Women's Higher Normal School. And now it's just known as Ochanomizu University.
Oh,
So I'm not
Uchinamizu.
really. Yeah, it's in Ochanomizu.
Oh,
So I'm not
oh, nice.
really sure as to why it was. I don't know
What
if it was an insult.
was
It's
it?
like it's for normal people. I don't know if that's what the
Was the word
implication was
futsu?
here.
Was the original Japanese like futsu, or was there another word and it's just being translated as normal?
I'm not sure. The research I had doesn't actually tell me the original name of it in Japanese, just the translation as the normal school. It's an interesting name.
The evolution of the name is also quite fascinating.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know which one's my favorite. I think my
Don't.
favorite is the pointlessly long one, the women's campus of Tokyo Normal School. What does this mean? I don't know. But what a great name. Unless it was kind of a name to denote that this school is for lower class people, like
Like
normal
not the
people, not
peerage.
people of the peerage. I kind of want to know now. I need to know.
Like the us regular people, we would go to this
Yeah.
one. Well, you wouldn't go as you would not be qualifying
You
to
can
enter,
go
but
to the
I could go.
PRS school. You have to go to the normal school. Like, okay.
I think I like that better.
Yeah. So this next bit, I've been unable to figure out what this is in modern day money. But when she worked at the Tokyo Women's Normal School, her salary was 800 yen.
Oh. Oh.
Oh, and her post was actually the highest at that school, available to women at the time for that era. During her time
Ah.
there, she published several dissertations and made speeches about the improvement for the status of women in Japan. And then in 1899, then actually a law was passed called the Girls' Higher Education Law, which required each prefecture to establish at least one. They only had to put one school in their whole prefecture, one middle
Oh,
school for girls in the whole prefecture, minimum
the whole prefecture.
in
Oh,
the whole prefecture.
okay.
However, these schools still did not provide girls with the same quality of education that boys' schools provided. And so the fight continued. And in 1900, with the help of her friend, Princess Oyama Tsutematsu, who is actually the first Japanese woman to receive a college degree, as well as
Oh,
Alice Bacon, they three of them together founded the Joshi Eigaku Juku, the Women's Institute for English Studies, located in Kojimachi in Tokyo. And this was built and designed to provide an equal opportunity for a liberal arts education for all women, regardless of their parentage.
oh,
I guess maybe because it was too new, too radical, maybe, for Japan at the time. The school faced chronic underfunding, and she
ah,
spent most of her time having to fundraise in order to support the school. Luckily, by 1903. Due to her enthusiastic efforts, the school finally gained official recognition 1903. And by 1905, Tsuda became the first president of the Japanese branch of the Tokyo YWCA, which is the Young Women's Christian Association.
Hmm.
I couldn't find much else about her life that happened after this. As we know, she died in 1919. So, presumably, after this, she continued with her teaching and her push for equal education in Japan. Her life was so busy, it did eventually affect her health, and she suffered from a stroke, which
Ah.
severely set her back. And in January of 1919, she retired to her summer cottage in Kamakura, where she died after a long illness. Oh, sorry. No, she died 1929. So she had her stroke in in January 1919, retires to her summer cottage in Kamakura, where she died after a long illness 10 years later at the age of 64.
Oh.
And and her grave is actually buried in the grounds of the Women's Institute that she founded with her two friends.
Oh.
It is now called the Tsuda College. It changed its name in 1933 to the Tsuda Eigaku Juku and became Tsuda Daigaku, Tsuda University later on, and then Tsuda College in English, Tsuda Daigaku in Japanese, and it was given this name after World War II. In 2017, the English name was then changed to Tsuda University to match the Japanese, and it still remains to this day one of the most prestigious institutes for higher education in Japan for women. Interestingly, though she strongly desired social reform for women, she did not advocate a feminist social movement, and she opposed the
Oh.
women's suffrage movement.
Aha.
And her activities were there more based on her philosophy that education should focus on developing individual intelligence and personality. It was more about the individual than the collective. And
Hmm.
the reason I ultimately picked her, this woman, she will be on the new Japanese banknotes coming from next year.
They are being updated. Oh, next year. All right.
Next year, we get to see them. That means we have the rest of the year to finish off the monies. We got one more to do, the 10,000 yen.
That's oh goodness. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We just jump, but I'm glad you did. This is her story is absolutely fascinating. And we haven't touched a lot. We've touched a little tiny bit about like women in Japan and the gender inequality, especially compared to other countries, but
Yeah.
not so much. So this one is it's a nice we have to dive into that at some point. So it's good that we've you've gotten this one and to I admire her like to go back to school and to study sciences and like
Mm.
biology and in different countries, not just America. She went to UK as well, and then to come back to Japan, like she could have stayed, I think, like and continued educating, and she would probably done, you know, very well staying. But
Yeah.
she decided to come back to Japan to help women's education,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's amazing. I definitely like Alice Bacon. Want to hear more about her as well.
Yeah, I think she would be interesting to learn about her time in Japan.
Mm.
But Tsuda Umeko will be on the 5,000 yen note, which I suppose follows in the tradition of Hideo Iguchi. Seems like the 5,000 yen is the note that will have a Japanese woman from their history. The 1,000 and the 10,000 will remain a guy from Japanese history. And the other side of the new note will be wisteria flowers.
Oh, Fuji, right? That's Fuji.
Hmm?
I think wisteria in Japanese is Fuji.
No,
Something
no, it's
Fuji.
not. I know what it is because I
What
know
is
of
it?
it from all of my research. about a certain clan in Japan, which we keep coming back to,
Fujiwara.
the Fujiwara, because apparently legends say that their name Fujiwara comes from the fact that the guy who was originally given the name Fujiwara, he helped plan the coup, which helped the imperial throne underneath a wisteria tree. And that
Ah,
is why they were given that name.
named Fujiwara.
Hmm.
Oh, that's phenomenal. It's like, there's Fuji
So you
involved
were
because I always thought it was
you were
Korean.
half right.
Yeah, I was
Fuji.
like,
Yeah.
because I was like Fuji-san, like Fuji-san. That's no, that's Mount Fuji. There's Fuji. Because I was thinking Ajisai, but that's hydrangea, which is
Mm.
blooming right now. The
They
hydrangeas are
are.
starting. I don't know why I didn't like connect Fujiwara. And yeah, I'm glad you when you went. I was we're going to explore Meiji. I did not think you would touch into women's history, and oh, I'm super excited and happy that that's where you ended up. I love it. I mean, that's just you just gave me a cherry on top of the strawberry on top of my cake.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. But that means it is over to Sumiko no Heza.
You'll never guess what I have today. You'll never guess.
I'm gonna guess a Senryū.
Oh my goodness, you are so surprised. Yes, but I like this one. I had this one in my back pocket for a while and I missed the timing of this one, so we're doing it a little bit late. So I'm going to read it to you. And yeah, I'm going to read it to you and then I'll explain it to you because I don't think that it's going to be mentioned what it's about in the actual Senryū. So whenever you're ready,
I'm good, let's go.
let's read it and analyze it and then I'll let you give me what you think at the end. 隣へもはがしの例にあやめ吹き.
So like neighbor or next to.
You got 隣, yeah.
I heard hashi.
はしご.
Hashigo. Oh no. I recently learned today that hashi, there's actually 3 different words that are pronounced hashi, not 2 like I thought.
Oh, what's the third one?
There's bridge, there's chopstick, and there's like the
Yeah.
edge of something is hashi.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, that the,
But one is
the
like
edge is
hashi, hashi.
of the inflection.
Yeah.
Of the
Wait, hashigo. It's not stairs. What's the word I'm thinking? Not stairs. The things that are like stairs. Ladders. Ladders are steps. Or stairs. Which one? Ladders. Steps. Ladders.
hashigo is ladder.
Why do I know that word?
I don't
Most
know. That's
random
amazing.
word to learn, but okay.
You never know what you pick up sometimes.
That's
It
true.
just or where it came from. It may have been from school or something.
Yeah.
But the translation I've got is putting irises on the roof next door to as thanks for the ladder. Funny enough, we're touching into another flower.
Very true. I'm not sure what the meaning is. Is there an interpretation? Oh, also, is there no author for this one? Is it anonymous?
Yep, it's another anonymous. I mean, most of them are either anonymous or pen names I'm running into. I've no idea where they're coming from. So this one is a new one on me. I have not encountered this before, but I've got a description that says the 5th of May is the Boys' Festival. Boys' dolls are set up in the tokonoma. The koinobori is flown outside, and irises are put on the roof. A certain man who has sons borrows a ladder from next door. As a reward, he puts the irises on the roof of the neighbor's, though the neighbor has no sons or is not going to decorate his own roof.
Is that a tradition that's not practiced as much now? Koinobori is
I've,
done every year. I always see the
yeah,
flags. I always see the people enjoying, but I have never seen anyone put irises up.
and now it's generally Kodomo no Hi. It's called Children's Festival, not
Mm-hmm.
just Boys Festival. The the dolls with the kabuto are still
Yeah.
put up, but it's called Children's Festival. I think Koi Nobody can be for both for all children, not just specifically for boys.
But yeah, that must be a tradition that's, well, potentially sadly dying out. I've never seen people do that with the flowers. Everything else,
I've not.
yes, I've seen.
Have we seen irises? Not. We don't see irises so much here. I've seen a few in gardens.
Yeah, only in gardens or maybe temples very rarely.
Hmm.
Actually, now that I've looked at a picture and reminded myself what they look like, when Hajime and I were in Kyoto during Golden Week, so the start of May, Kinkakuji was full of irises. They'd planted them everywhere. And I
Oh,
wonder if it's because it was May, the month of the children's festival.
I do like that it's more commonly called Kodomo no Hi and not just like Boys Festival like that. It's including all children. I I I like that, but it makes because that time around May is when irises bloom, spring, isn't it? Like I
Hajime and I were wondering why there were so many. Like everywhere we went, they had seemed to plant irises at every temple we went to in Golden Week. It was purple, it was everywhere.
oh, must have been beautiful.
They're very beautiful. But I do wonder if as well it is because it was koinobori time.
Makes sense in the basis of this what Senryū like at least prior to 1940 something. So must be a tradition that just faded out over time.
But they put them on the roof. They don't just plant them
Mhm.
outside. On the
Yeah,
roof.
it's on the roof because he borrowed the ladder.
I guess next May I'll have to be on the lookout for
I've
irises
not
on rooftops.
I've not seen that. Just the giant koinobori.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a house nearby me who always hangs out the koinobori flags every year. But I've never seen flowers.
Mm-mm.
Oh, that's fascinating. That's something else to look out for. And now we know that irises have a special meaning in Japan. But yeah, before we ramble on too much more, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in this week. I'm very glad with the topic I found, like women's history, a bit of a toe dipping into the Meiji era. Of course, the Meiji era is very important in regards to a lot of big changes that happened, and we will, of course, cover them at some point. But just dipping our toes in for today, and thank you for the Senryū, Heather. Definitely gave us new ideas and things to think about or look for while we're in Japan. But that is gonna be everything from me. How about you?
I have something new for this week, Thomas. Just before we head out, I am releasing my own podcast that is coming out in June, which I guess is now this month. And the
Yes.
not last month. And the title is called Going Tekito. And you'll find out more about what that word means in the first episode.
I'm so happy it's finally coming. A long time in the planning process. So it's so exciting that it's being done now. Thank you everyone. Goodbye. Sayonara.
Are you changing our outro now?
That's it. I
That's
say
it. We're
that,
done.
you just laugh, and then I just sign off.
It was what season. Eh? Wait, this is our. What year is this now? That's coming up this month?
Almost year 4.
Oh my goodness.
But it's like season 10 for how the amount of times we've come back.
We come back. May take a while, but we get back.
We come back and we're as consistent as we can be right now.
Hey, we are doing our best.
We are indeed. So yes, we will keep you updated on Heather's new show. I'm sure when the first episode comes back, you will tell us. Yes.
Yes, I will. I will. I
Okay.
will. I
Good.
will tell you.
Thank
Here,
you.
I will tell you.
But apart from that, thank you again for tuning in this week. And until next time, mata ne.
皆さん気をつけて。またね。